There is a lot of stuff going on here in this Gemini season. And let's go ahead and get started. This is Ryan with Astrology by Ryan. And we're going to be taking a look at the major transits that are going on in June of 2024. The big one that's going on right now, forming a cazimi with the sun, is the planet of Venus. And Venus signifies love and relationships, but it also signifies market dynamics, commerce, the ways that we interact with each other through all kinds of relationships, monetarily, physically, emotionally. And right now, Venus is moving into a cazimi with the sun, which will perfect on June 4th of this year. And the thing that's really interesting about this is 8 years ago, Venus also made a cazimi in the sign of Gemini around the 4th of June, something like that. And so why is that significant, you ask, right? Well, it's significant because of just what happened with Donald Trump. To be quite frank, he has recently been convicted of 34 felony counts of falsifying business documents. I realize it's a political thing to talk about, and I'm not trying to persuade anybody of their politics one way or the other, but I do want to look at the cycles of this, because 8 years ago, Donald Trump started calling Hillary Clinton Crooked Hillary. And right after the Venus cazimi at the Republican National Convention, the slogan for the Trump campaign of "Lock her up" erupted in the people at the convention and became a major part of his campaign trail. And fast forward 8 years later, because Venus goes in cycles of eights, 5 retrograde cycles for every 8 years, that golden ratio number popping up. 8 years later, Venus is going cazimi in Gemini again, and Donald Trump, who 8 years ago was accusing Hillary Clinton of being a crook, has now just been convicted of felony. So it's interesting the way that these cycles play out. And yeah, that's the cycle that's going on right now. We also are noticing at the same time that Mercury, at the same time that Venus will be in an exact conjunction with the sun, Mercury will be in an exact conjunction with Jupiter, both in the sign of Gemini. Little couples play going on there between those four. And then in a couple days after that, the moon coming into Gemini also will form a new moon in Gemini. And so we have this situation where we have a cazimi with Venus, then we have a Venus and a cazimi with Venus and a Mercury Jupiter conjunction, so 2 conjunctions happening simultaneous. Then the moon comes in conjunction with the sun as the new moon. Then Mercury later on in the month, in a few days, is going to go cazimi with the sun as well. So we have all this kind of like renewal, rebirth, death, and reignition of ideas and information in the air sign of Gemini. Gemini is an air sign, and it's double-bodied, mutable. It's speaking about the quality of it to be present in 2 things simultaneously, or to be thinking about how it transitions from one thing to the next. So double-bodied has this kind of movement quality to it that also speaks to the presence of 2 things simultaneously. It's a very interesting quality. And Gemini is one of the double-bodied signs. Gemini is the ruler, Mercury is the ruler of Gemini. Jupiter is in Gemini, also a double-bodied ruler, rules Sagittarius and Pisces, both double-bodied signs. So those 2 planets are really activating this quality of death and rebirth, of transition between one thing and the next, of movement between energy and communication, the way that we interact as societies. We've seen transformation in South America or South Africa with the recent elections, where the ruling party has just been not exactly overturned, but they've lost a majority vote, where they're now having to start to compromise in a lot of ways. We've got all the activity that's been taking place in the Middle East with Israel and the death of the president in Iran, all the things that are going on with Russia and Ukraine still. The thing that to think about that is, later in the month, Mars is going to form a square. As Mars enters Taurus, it's going to form an exact degree and sign-based square with Pluto, which is this planet of power and death and transformation. And we're going to be really feeling a lot of those kinds of experiences taking place later on in the month. Meanwhile, thinking about right here in the early part of the month, on June 5th, with these 5 planets in Gemini, one of the things I wanted to say about that is this is graduation season, the beginning of June. High schools, community colleges, and colleges, universities are going through graduation right now. And here in Berkeley, California, where I'm at, on the 5th of June, Berkeley High is having a graduation in the afternoon, and the chart for that moment puts this 5-planet stellium in the 9th house of higher education. So we can think of that theme of the 9th house and this stellium really powering this graduation, and this batch of students are going to be matriculating here in the beginning of June. And all across California and the West Coast, we can see that if the graduations are happening on the 5th and 6th, we're going to have all these planets in Gemini. And even if they're later, there's still going to be 4 planets, but it's a powerful configuration that's going on. Finally, towards the end of the month, there's kind of this easing of things as the moon moves into a sextile with Mars. The moon in Pisces is going to move into a sextile with Mars. We'll still be in Taurus. Meanwhile, that Mars in Taurus is going to be sextiling Venus in Cancer. So we're going to have moon to Mars in a sextile, Mars to Venus in a sextile. These are whole sign sextiles. At different points, they obviously perfect a degree-based sextile, but they're not all in exact degree-based sextiles simultaneously. But they're definitely in whole sign sextiles. So moon to whole sign sextile with Mars, moon actually conjunct with Saturn. So those two are going to be in whole sign sextile with Mars, whole sign sextile with Venus and Mercury and Sun. So we've got kind of like this fan configuration that's taking place, which means that Saturn and moon in the exaltation of Venus and the domicile of Jupiter. Jupiter is going to be in Gemini still, but still in relationship to each other. But these planets in Pisces are going to be in trine with the planets in Cancer. And so we have this sextile trine situation going on, which seems harmonious and beautiful. We think of the trines and the sextiles as easy and harmonious aspects. And then meanwhile, we've got Pluto still in Aquarius, which is kind of pulling up the rear, kind of keeping the screws, the thumb screws on, keeping things going, to keep that tension in place for the rest of the planets as they are moving in towards the end of the month. We have all that air energy up at the beginning, and towards the end, all the planets are in water and earth signs, except for Pluto, which remains in Aquarius. But anyways, those are the major transits this month, and got a lot of things going on to pay attention to as the month goes on. So looking forward to connecting with you all again next time. Until then, keep your eye on the sky and make a wish upon a star.